This is an SABC News presentation.
Goeienaand. Welkom by Fokus op hierdie Sondag aand. Ek is Lenet Francis. Fokus se beloofde gesprek oor mediese fondse moes in die lig van die gebeure die afgelope week uitgestel word. Ons praat nou volgende Sondag 1 November met al die nasionale rolspelers oor mediese skemas en die mediese beroep. Die afgelope week het Suid-Afrika gebuk gegaan onder betogings deur duisende studente landwyd. Hulle was ontevrede met die beplande verhoging in universiteitsfooie en het in groot getalle die strate ingevaar. Teen Vrydag het president Jacob Zuma toegegee en aangekondig dat universiteitsfooie nie aanstaande jaar verhoog gaan word nie. Maar gister het die leiers van die betogings by Wits Universiteit bekendgemaak dat die protesoptrede voortgaan. Hulle eis onder meer dat ondersteunende dienste by die universiteit nie meer deur uitgekontrakteerde maatskappye hanteer word nie. Om hieroor te praat het ons in ons Johannesburgse ateljee die president van die EFF se studenteorganisasie, Mpho Morelani, en AfriForum Jeug se woordvoerder Ian Cameron. Ons is ook op Skype in verbinding met die ANC-veteraan professor Ben Turok. Ons het die wit studente raadslede genooi, maar hoewel hulle aanvanklik aangedui het dat hulle wel sal kom, het hulle later laat weet dit gaan nie moontlik wees nie. Goeienaand meneere, thank you very much for your time. Let's start with you, Mpho. Has the fees really fallen? Is this a victory for the student movement that we've seen the past week?
No, fees have not fallen. We've met with the state president on Friday, and we raised our issues with the state president, and our call was very clear as the EFF Students Command, that we're advocating for free quality education, and also we substantiated as to how do we think we can arrive at free quality education. And we made a very strong proposal that there should be an introduction of education tax where private individuals are taxed at a minimum of 2% of their annual income, and corporations are taxed at a minimum of 5% of their annual revenue. And also, we made an urgent call to the state president and the Minister of Higher Education and Training to say that there must be a discussion in Parliament where fee-free quality education is being discussed. And we were shocked, flabbergasted by the response of the Minister of Higher Education and Training, because he stated that it must be gazetted first, the discussion, and therefore it will be taken to Parliament. And we're saying it's an urgent call. Students across the country, black, white, Indian, colors, whether they wear a red, blue, or yellow, they are saying that there should be an introduction of a free quality education. And for the state president and the Minister of Higher Education to call a meeting where they say that they want to come up with solutions and not listen to the proposals made by various student organizations, we're saying it's a waste of time. They are not taking young people of this country serious, in particular students, and hence we are saying that the struggle for free quality education should continue. In fact, tomorrow we are saying that there should be a national shutdown of all institutions of higher learning, because we must not be swayed by the zero-free fee increment of 2016. Because the question that we ask also was that what mechanisms are they putting in place in ensuring that we do not find ourselves in a similar situation come 2017, and there was no response to that effect. Therefore, as the EFF Students Command, we can't celebrate the temporary measure that the Vice Chancellors, the Minister of Higher Education and Training, the State President came up with. We're saying it's a temporary measure. We need real solutions. Hence, we're saying that in the first sitting of Parliament, higher education, free education must be discussed.
Net vir ons kykers sê vir die vloei van die gesprek gaan ons meerendeels Engels praat en AfriForum Jeug het ingestem om wel Engels te praat. Ian, why couldn't you identify as AfriForum Jeug with what was happening in the country, particularly with student movements and student demands were concerned?
Lynette, it's important to say that we do identify when we do agree with many of the requests that were made. The only part we don't agree with is violence going along with it. AfriForum themselves, AfriForum Youth themselves are handing over a memorandum tomorrow to the presidency saying that Minister Bladenzimandi must go. He should be sacked for his ill-equipped way of handling the crisis that we saw in the past week. I think it's terrible as well that government seem to say that there is no money. So AfriForum Youth have now gone, and I will elaborate later on in this, where we have said which funds could have actually been spent on tertiary education that we use to bail out state institutions for corruption and malfunctioning financial systems, and therefore we are saying that government do have the money to give quality education to students at a far lower rate than what they are currently doing. So yes, there are funds, but government need to take responsibility, and it's important that they don't now, because that's what we're seeing from the ANC now, that they're saying we identify with students, but we're not seeing, and that's where I agree with them, Paul, they're not coming up with a solution that is sustainable in the future, and that's what we would like to see.
Professor Ben-Turek, this movement and this display of student solidarity, did it surprise you?
Come in there. I want to say that I spent 20 years in Parliament, of which 10 years in the Finance Committee, and the figure that is being talked about now is 3 billion rand, which is peanuts in terms of South Africa's financing. If you look at unspent funds every year, and if you look at wasteful expenditure, it is far greater than 3 billion. And let me say this, I think that the victims of this situation should not be asked to become bookkeepers. It's not for them to look into the budget and find the money. It's for government to find the money, and I believe that it's not difficult.
Net hierna sit ons die gesprek voort. Ons gaan nou weer met professor Ben-Turek gesels. Moenie weggaan nie. Ons is nou terug. Welkom terug by Fokus. Ons praat nou verder oor die eise van studente wat die afgelope week betoog het teen die beplande verhogings in universiteitsfooie. In ons Johannesburg se ateljee is die president van die EFF se studenteorganisasie, Paul Morolane, en AfriForum Jeug se woordvoerder Ian Cameron. Ons is ook op Skype in verbinding met die ANC-veteraan professor Ben-Turek. Ons het die wit studente raadslede genooi, maar hulle het laat aangedui dit gaan nie moontlik wees nie, maar ons gesit die gesprek steeds voort. Professor Turek, I just want to get back to what you touched on in the very first segment of our conversation. Was this more about the students? Was it more about than just fees having to fall? Was there bigger issues at hand that we've in the past not addressed that have now come to the fore?
Yes, there are all sorts of ideological issues that have emerged, which frankly are new to me as well. For example, the national view is that we must have law and order, we must observe the Constitution, and so on. And we must have a non-racial society, which are values I support. But you see, the students are saying that below those values, there's also a status quo. And that status quo is unfair. So I have to rethink my position. And I say, okay, I stand for non-racialism. I'm very pleased with the public support for the students. I'm delighted to see that white students participated. I'm also delighted to hear the EFF person saying that he includes white students in his formula. But at the same time, we have to recognize that black students are suffering under those values. And so we must rethink. And I am doing that.
Let me just bring Mpo into this conversation. Is there a disconnect, you think, Mpo, between the executive and the electorate?
There is a disconnect because we don't think that there's a thorough public participation. And when laws, legislation are being passed, we don't think that there's really a public participation because oftentimes issues that are being raised by the people on the ground they're not being adhered to. And a point in case is the issue that we are raising here. The ruling party in their last conference, they've taken a resolution that there should be an implementation of free education. And that is as a result of the discussion that they had with their people on the ground. And to date, the minister has ensured that the issue is being tabled in Parliament. And, but we must give context also to what do we mean when we say free education, because it is very important that we understand that the free education that we're advocating for as the EFF Students Command is the education system which will entail that we are being liberated from the orthodox indoctrination which happened due to colonial apartheid and the neoliberal post-apartheid. And we're saying that there should be a curriculum transformation because we're not happy with the Western theory, Western epistemology,
and that's
institutions
very much
of higher learning.
In terms of long term.
And we're saying that we want to be taught in a language in which we understand as black people, because a report from the UN and other sources have stated that if young children study in their mother tongue, they have chances of succeeding as opposed to us being taught in English, which is foreign, which we do not understand, by the way.
But so, just to interrupt you, the President said that the task team would look at a range of some of these issues. I just want to get back to...
These issues are not new.
Just hold on, Paul. Let me allow Ian an opportunity. Besides Blade Mzimande, the Minister of Higher Education, that should fall, Paul was saying that they've come up with initiatives of where the money can be found and what the approach should be in the future. Waar moet die regering die geld kry?
Let me give you a few examples. I went and looked at a few numbers that the government have wasted over the past few years that could have gone to this. So, for example, did you know that 20% of South Africa's procurement budget gets wasted on corruption every single year? It's a massive amount of money that could have been used. The post office bailout could have paid for 11,000 degrees. The past nuclear deal that President Zuma secured for us could have provided us with 65 million free degrees. The VIP jets that government used, 16,000 free degrees. So these are all numbers just from taking money.
So, but why should Blade Mzimande now take the fall for that?
I think it's not only him. We use him because of the way that he treated the past week's issues, that he said it's not a crisis. He couldn't speak to students. He didn't come and go straight to ground level and speak to the students. Everyone requested him to come and speak to the students. It eventually didn't happen, and the president had to come and speak to the students.
So let me just get clarity. You now, as AfriForum Youth, you are in support of the demands that the student movements that we've seen the past week made?
Most of the demands, the only thing that we question is if there is free education, where will the money really come from? We say these things, but we must also remember that taxpayers need to provide money, and currently only 8% of South Africans pay tax in the country, and we already have to pay for so much. We are one of the highest tax countries in the world, and therefore we have to make sure that we have a sustainable way of finding funds to provide education.
We're going to get back to you, Paul. We just quickly take a break and then I'll allow you to comment on that. Net hierna hoor ons onder meer wat die afgelope week se gebeure vir die land beteken. Moenie weggaan nie. Ons is nou terug. Welkom terug. Die studentebetogings is volgens die studenteleiers van Wits beslis nie verby nie. Eksamens lê voor en ons hoor nou onder meer wat die gebeure vir die land voorspel. In ons Johannesburg se ateljee is die president van die EFF se studenteorganisasie, Mpho Morelane, en AfriForum Jeug se woordvoerder, Ian Cameron. Professor Ben Turok gesels via Skype met ons. Die Wit studenteraadslede het aanvanklik ons uitnodiging aanvaar, maar het later aangedui, dis nie meer moontlik nie, maar ons het die gesprek wel voort hier in Johannesburg. You quickly, the point you needed to make before I speak to Professor
Look, the point I wanted to make earlier on was that there's a lot of money in this country. In the meeting that we had with Jacob Zuma on Friday, we asked him to give us a platform to ask the vice chancellors who were part of the meeting to tell us as to how much is in their reserves. Remember, some of these institutions, in particular Wits University, University of South Africa, Stellenbosch, UCT, and so on and so forth, they have reserves. Billions of rands are in those reserves. And we say that the struggle of education, of access, it shouldn't only be the struggle of government, it should be the struggle also of universities, of the private sector. Therefore, in those reserves, we're saying that they must ensure that they play a role in ensuring that students who can access education, they access it. And we were shocked by the state president because he refused that these vice chancellors should tell us as to how much do they have in their reserves.
So should we assume that the EFF then supports the Wits stance at the moment? And I know there's been some indications at Rhodes as well that this needs to continue.
No. It's not about Wits. By the way, there's a narrative in the media which seeks to say that this struggle started at Wits University. That is not true. I mean, 2 weeks before, we've seen a struggle at the University of South Africa, at Tshwane North College. Students were suspended fighting for the issue of access. For 2 weeks, the college was closed.
So should I assume that you do support Wits' stance that this continues?
Was supporting all universities which are embarking on the struggle of access to education, whether it is Wits University, whether it's Tshwane North College, whether it is the University of South Africa. This is not only about the Wits struggle, it's about students who can access institutions of Ireland.
Let's talk about this narrative, Professor Benturuk. What should we, who are in support of some are, some aren't, of the students' movement, how should we read what the climate in our country, and particularly the concerns that the young people, the students have raised?
Well, you know, from the point of view of the ANC and government, we are actually facing a new situation. We have a very powerful labor movement who are defending living standards very strongly, getting increases above inflation. Now we have a student movement which is, in a sense, very strong, and exercising muscle on the part of the poor. It means that South Africa must re-look at itself. This is a very wealthy country with very rich people, and economists from around the world are now talking about inequality, the differences in our country, the enormous gap between rich and poor. So I don't want to play bookkeeper on this program, but we need to draw attention to the fact that these struggles of poor students and unemployed people are taking place in a context which I agree with some of the people saying has a certain colonial history. And we have to address that. I agree that we should not put excessive pressure on taxpayers and so on. But you know, when you look at business and the top 100 companies and all that, the wealth that is accumulated at the top of the tree is massive. Why should we pay a chief executive the same as somebody in New York or in Europe? These people are demanding remuneration and bonuses, which are world class. How can you do that in a country of inequality?
Ian?
So we need to re-examine all the values in South Africa. I also want to say one thing about the universities.
Briefly,
the universities
Professor?
have made a mistake. They've gone to the courts, they've criminalized the students, and that is a serious matter of public interest. I, as an ordinary ratepayer and a citizen in South Africa, object to the fact that the universities have called in riot police to deal with the students who have so much public support. That's wrong. We should condemn it.
Thank you for that point, Professor Benturuk. Ian, you wanted to comment on something?
Yeah, I think we need to get the facts straight a little bit. Professor, I don't agree on all your points. First of all, most of the universities didn't criminalize it. All they said, they condemned the violence. And in many cases, there were a lot of violence, and we need to stop that. It's unfair to students who want to continue to study for their exams not to be able to study, who now have to cancel all their plans for the next 3 months. Some of them have to start working in January. They can't do that now because they are being intimidated, and I feel that's wrong. I think it's fair that people have the right to strike. They have the right to bring their demands to the table, speak to the president, as was done. But in many cases, there were violence, and we need to stop that. The other part is many corporate companies, and I'm not saying all of them. Yes, there is a lot of money, but we need to go and look what is the value that they are adding through bursaries that they give to students that are previously disadvantaged, and it's important to take that into consideration. We need to look at it a bit in broader perspective and not only go through perceptions that are made in the media in the past week. We need to look at numbers and be realistic about what we've seen in the past 7
Paul
years.
was saying earlier on...
Just
hold on for a second. Paul was saying earlier on that we should have a national shutdown tomorrow as well, and this needs to be debated in Parliament. Briefly, will AfriForum Youth support that initiative?
Not if it's intimidating students who are paying for their studies and that want to continue their studies. It's unfair to them to say you are not allowed to study because other people are being violent.
We're not surprised by the view from the leader from AfriForum. Look, university management are in cahoots with the ruling elite and capital. As a result, they are criminalizing the activities of students. The protest, it is not violent in any way. It's a genuine protest. And I was in Parliament 3 days ago when the Minister of Higher Education came to address students. Students were sitting down with their hands up. The police were beating students who were sitting down. And how can we say that they are not criminalizing a genuine protest of students?
Okay. But we did see some of scenes and attacks of violence, and we have had reports, so let's not also minimize that. There is that on record. Briefly, within 30 seconds, the way forward, how do we continue talking to one another, Professor, that we don't have literally a national shutdown, as Mpho suggested?
We need meetings which are in the public domain, not behind closed doors, not only in the president's suites. We need a national discussion which is serious and involving students.
Thank you so much for your time. We appreciate it. Daarmee het ons aan die einde gekom van vanaand se program. Ons verwelkom kykers se kommentaar, al julle tweets en al julle voorstelle. Skryf net die woord Fokus gevolg deur 'n kort boodskap en SMS dit na 34444. 'n SMS kos R2. Word gerus ook 'n lid van ons Fokus groep op Facebook en volg ons ook op Twitter by Fokus ZA. Ons vertrou dis 'n goeie week. Onthou ons gesprek oor mediese fondse is op 1 November van Lenet Francis, ons gaste in die ateljee en via Skype en die res van die Fokusspan. Totsiens tot volgende Sondag aan. Sien jou dan om 7 uur weer hier op SABC 3.